Now, the first step you're going to make towards drafting your own persuasive argument will be choosing a stance or a position on a controversial issue. Reading about controversial issues can be challenging. After all, in controversial issues, there's no apparent right answer. Otherwise, the subject wouldn't be controversial. So there are generally lots of good points to be made on both sides. Thus, reading two opposing arguments takes patience, an open mind, and a whole lot of understanding. So the first thing I want you to understand is why people tend to disagree. So this little lecture is going to be on different reasons people are often inclined to disagree with one another. When we think about famous controversies like gay rights, abortion, gun control, we find that one can often pinpoint where the difference or the disagreement comes from. Often people will disagree because A, they have different moral or religious outlooks. Some people are against gay marriage because they think it goes against the Bible, or because they grew up with the moral assumption that marriage is between a man and a woman. So oftentimes, a lot of controversial issues, abortion as well, come down to how a person's religion feels or their moral set or their moral upbringing. So that's one of the most difficult differences to reconcile, by the way. Oftentimes, if you're trying to fight against someone whose religion goes against what you're trying to get from them, you're not going to win. Because sometimes that would entail making them change their whole moral outlook, which can be really, really difficult. So this is the hardest thing to overcome. Another reason people might disagree is they might interpret information differently. They might interpret information differently. In gun control, the gun control debate, for example, people often argue over the Second Amendment and what it means. Some people take it as permission for everyone to carry a gun at any time, while other parties will take it to mean that military personnel can carry weaponry. They might also disagree on what types of weapons should be covered because, of course, it's very, very vague in that rule itself. So often it is a matter of people just looking at information differently. Oftentimes it's because the information is vague as well. Another reason people might disagree is they might have different priorities. Different priorities. If a state's budget is in crisis and there's only so much money to go around, then arguments might spring up between people who think it should go to education, people who think it should go to jobless benefits, and maybe people who think it should go to police services and protection. And people prioritize different things. So if education is particularly important to you, if you work in education or if you have kids in school, you might want the money to go to that. While if you're recently unemployed, you might want the money to go to jobless benefits. So it's going to depend on your priorities at the time as to where you stand. Another reason people will sometimes disagree is that they simply don't know all the facts, or sometimes they've been given wrong information. This is often the basis of arguments. People have heard two different things about the subject, or they don't really understand it, and so they will naturally oppose something that they don't understand. This is one of the easier things to fix. If you're arguing with someone and they disagree with you just because they don't understand the issue, all you really have to do is give them the facts and help them understand it, and then it's much easier to get them on your side. Another reason might be that people disagree on terms. They might disagree on what a certain central term in an argument means. This is often an issue. For example, in stem cell research, some people think of stem cells as just coming from embryos. And of course, stem cells can come from embryos or adults. But if you don't clarify which you mean, it might be a really difficult argument. So someone who sees stem cells as just coming from embryos might disagree with it because they don't want fetuses used for research. But a person who is for stem cell research might be talking about adult stem cells. Thus, they're looking at different terminology. You also see this with abortion, because some people see a human being as someone who is already separated from the mother and out in the world, while others see the cells that make up an embryo as a human being. That's a tough one because no one can really objectively define exactly when the cells become a human being. So that's one where it's really hard to fix that. Oftentimes, though, just by outlining a specific definition of your terms, by clarifying exactly what you're talking about, you can avoid an argument. Another reason for disagreement might be different life experiences. Everyone has their own background, everyone's seen and done different things in life. And often this can change how they feel about certain issues. So with gun control, a person who was robbed, who had a home robbery, and was able to ward off a burglar by using a gun, they might fight for less gun control because a gun helped them in that situation. Whereas someone who had a loved one killed by gun violence might feel the exact opposite way because a gun hurt them in some way. So these aren't totally rational reasons for being for or against gun control, but, no less, people will oppose certain things because of personal experience. So those are some of the primary reasons why people might disagree. And it's important when you're reading two opposing positions to be able to tell why your parties disagree on the issue, and that will help you better understand both sides.